Welcome to the Life Giver Marriage Podcast, a place for honest conversation and hope for your military or first responder marriage. This is your host, Corey Weathers, and I'm honored to share this journey with you.
Hi, this is Dr. John Townsend, and you're listening to Life Giver.
Hi, this is Taya Kyle, and you're listening to Life Giver.
Hi, I'm Shasta Nelson, founder of GirlfriendCircles.com, and you are listening to Life Giver.
Welcome to another episode of the Life Giver Podcast. This is Corey, and we are in the middle of a series called Gen Z, Raising Kids in the Chaos. And I am so excited to bring to the podcast an episode on Young Life. And Alex, oh my gosh, Alex, how do you pronounce your last name?
Polaroid kind of sounds like Polaroid without an extra O. So.
Polaroid. Okay, I've been just calling you Alex from Young Life for so long. I was like, I haven't even said your last name out loud ever. It's just always been Alex from Young Life. So I'm so excited to invite Alex from Young Life to the podcast to talk with us today. I will share a little bit of my story about Young Life, but if we're going to do a series on Generation Z kids, I wanted to bring some of the best resources that I could find to you guys that are listening. And this episode is also a video episode. So if you would rather watch it than listen, there's a couple trailers that you're going to see in this episode. And so it's well worth watching, but it's also okay if you're listening as well. So Alex from Young Life, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Excited.
Yeah. So I reached out to Alex actually when we were en route to Fort Jackson. We had the experience of my oldest son joining Young Life when we were in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I knew coming to South Carolina, I needed to find the next Young Life to plug him into. And so that's how I met Alex, got to know him, and we've been involved in raising up and just getting involved as parents here in South Carolina to be a part of Young Life here. So I think the best way to start off is, Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into Young Life? And I think that will also get into explaining what Young Life is.
Yeah, thanks. So I grew up kind of in Cincinnati, Ohio, from my parents who are awesome, but definitely we didn't go to church. Church was never a background for us. And so growing up, I had no idea who Jesus was at all, besides what The Simpsons taught me. And so it was my golf coach. I remember my freshman year, you're a freshman in high school. For me, the big thing was making varsity in golf. For some reason, golf was like the popular sport. And it was like the cool kids would play golf in our school. And so I wanted to get in with them. I knew I had to make varsity. And my freshman year, I didn't. Got really sad. But my JV golf coach was a guy named Doug Gagan. And he was a Young Life leader, and he invited me to this thing called Young Life. There's a thing called Campaigners, which turns out that's a Bible study. I didn't know, but he said, I'll buy you Wendy's. And so I went.
For the Wendy's?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I want the Frosty. And so me and some of my buddies went. And so we were in this Bible study in one of our friends' basement. And it was such a weird, cool experience where I had guys, girls, freshmen to senior. There's probably about 20 of us in this room. And I remember just kind of I wanted to get to know some of the upperclassmen because you're a low-life freshman a little bit. And I remember the next day, a guy named Alex Garvin, walking down the hallways. He was the wide receiver, the star wide receiver of the football team. So this is the fall. And I remember him shouting my name down the hallway. He's like, Alex, my man. And I was like, I don't know what this Young Life thing is, but I'm always going. It was like, I feel like there's a community I got introduced to. And so I began to I kept going, hearing more about this Jesus guy. My Young Life leader was also my history teacher. And so it's kind of funny that he's also my teacher, and invited me to a Young Life camp, which are kind of like these 5-star resorts. Young Life camps are just some of the top places, qualities you could ever really go to for a Young Life camp, 5-star camping. And that was the first time I heard the gospel, like, clearly. Ever. The first time I've known the name of Jesus, but I didn't know what he came and did for me and what the purpose was. And so the best part was, it was that fall, I would say that my freshman year, I started kind of this relationship with Jesus. But the fact that I got to go home with this community of like kids from the school and my Young Life leader who just walked with me for the next 4 years of high school. And it got to the point when I was a senior in high school going to summer camp, and I had these sophomore, freshman guys who I've just been praying for to come to camp. And I remember they came to camp, and 3 or 4 of them like met Jesus at camp. And I was like, I don't want to do anything else the rest of my life. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, I love getting to walk with, in that case, my peers, my friends, and now high school friends. And so Young Life has always been, I guess the mission statement of Young Life is introducing adolescents to Jesus and helping them grow in their faith. And we say adolescents because we realize, especially like Generation Z and millennials, is adolescence used to be 14 to 18, and now it's 12 to 24. Adolescence kind of covers all of middle school, high school, and college, which is kind of the broad stroke that Young Life really hones and focuses in on.
So I have to tell everybody and remind everybody that I have decided, especially this year, that the podcast and the app that I do, that I'm not paid for sponsorships. And that's one of the things that I made a decision this year that, number one, I'm not really a good salesperson. And I know that about myself. And I just come across like, it just feels deceptive to me to try to sell people things. And so my commitment in this podcast has really been about sharing resources that I know are really awesome, that I personally have had experience with, or that I've known through other people that have had a great experience with. So having Young Life and having Alex here and any of the others that have been even in this series has not been paid content at all. This is really just out of genuine excitement. And so Alex, I would love to have you explain to everybody kind of the structure of Young Life, because it's very unique in that you've got college kids that are helping out. You've got what you mentioned, campaigners. And so talk with everybody a little bit about the structure, especially if they have kids and teenagers or adolescents in that range. What can they expect from Young Life, and how is Young Life different from other maybe resources or church youth groups or what they might find in their community?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think too, going back, sometimes people don't know. I feel like that when they hear Young Life, like, oh, this is a new thing. And crazy thing is, Young Life's been around since about 1941 was the official.
Really?
Of Young Life. And now it's amazing. From 1941, it started in Gainesville, Texas, basically with the heart of someone told Jim Rayburn. He had the pastor at the time said to Jim, hey, I know the kids in my youth group. I know them. What I don't know is that school across the street. Will you figure out how to reach lost kids in that school? And so Young Life, since 1941, has always been about reaching lost kids and going to where they are at. And so maybe some of the differences in Young Life and maybe a youth group, which youth groups are awesome. So this is not a downplayment or anything. I feel like in youth group, part of you is you have kids that are already coming, and your job is you're trying to shepherd them and be there for them and the ones that are coming. And maybe you're going out to the school and reaching. There's a lot of great youth pastors who do that. Young Life, from the very beginning, understands like, hey, we're missionaries, and the high school is our mission field. And so you'll find wherever high school kids are, like, that's where we're going, trying to meet them on their turf, on their ground. And that's one thing I think that Young Life is really big about. It's relationships, and it's about meeting kids where they're at. And so we do that a couple ways. One, in Young Life, also, and not only is it's been around for a while, it's also in just over 100 countries now. And so everywhere you go, it'll look maybe a little different. And in that, Young Life has a couple of these, I would say, sub-ministries under the big umbrella of Young Life. And so one of those is Wildlife, which is a great name for middle schoolers. And so Wildlife is just Young Life, the same model for middle schoolers. And then you have Young Life, which is high school. Then you have College Life, which is obviously college. And then in those, you have Club Beyond, which is ministry to military kids. And then you have Young Lives, which is ministry to teen moms. And then you have Capernaum, which is ministry to kids with special needs. And so there's a couple of these specific ministries in there that you're kind of gearing and kind of focusing on a little bit. And so in Young Life, we have a lot of these C's that kind of help explain the structure. And so first and foremost being Christ, like that's all we're about. And Jim Rayburn used to say, Jesus isn't what Young Life is about, it's all that Young Life is about. And so the first C kind of being Christ, that's what we do. The other one being Club. Club is a weekly meeting of, I would say, of the spectrum of all kids. I mean, I would say it's the one place during the week where if kids are always climbing the vertical ladder of the social ladder, it's the first time the social ladder turns horizontal one night. Mm-hmm. So you'll find kids who are in the football team, in the bands, like kids that don't interact at school, kind of come to this place and they kind of get to be kids again. And so we'll sing songs that they know. We'll play some music, and the music won't be maybe Chris Tomlin Christian music because the kids we're reaching don't know that. It'll probably be some Taylor Swift song or Journey or some classics. And then all of that will be this kind of controlled chaos. I mean, Club is just kind of this fast moving pace in the beginning and then slowly tailors down. We'll play some games. We'll do some laughter. We love laughter. Carl Barth once said, laughter is the closest thing to heaven. And so we love laughter in Young Life. And we'll get down to the point where we'll do what we call like the proclamation. We'll do a sequence of talks at Club that lead and explain what the gospel is. And so kind of that would be, who is God? And it'll go to, if we could understand if there is a God, what would he look like? John 1:14, the word became flesh and moved in with us to dwell among us. We'll talk about Jesus and what is he, if he's the visible image of the invisible God, what does that mean about who God is? We just got to look at Jesus. So we'll look at that a little bit, and we'll talk about kind of this need that we all feel, and we'll talk about sin and cross and resurrection. So we'll kind of hit all of those in Club. And then we have a thing, we call it contact work, which is, no one ever says contact work, but it's one of the C's, and that is going and meeting kids where they're at. That is the John 1:14. Jesus left heaven to come down to us. So we leave the comforts of our world, whether it's the college world as leaders or adult, or maybe it's your working world, and we go into the schools. Or if the schools don't allow us, we go and become coaches. We go volunteers, tutors, any way to get our foot in the door to get to know kids and be praying for kids. After Club contact work, we have a thing called Campaigners, which is just Bible study. It's kind of a funny name. It used to be called the Young Life Campaign back in the 40s. And then we dropped campaign, and that was kind of the Bible study. And so Campaigners is a Bible study that meets weekly.
Now, I have a question about the Campaigners. I know in Charlottesville, they split the guys from the girls. Do they do that in Young Life too? Do they do that everywhere, or is it still everybody's all together?
Yeah. So there's kind of these different philosophies in Young Life when it comes to Campaigners. When it comes to wildlife in particular, you normally split guys and girls because a 8th grade girl and a 7th or 6th grade boy are on completely different level, playing fields. Mm-hmm. So in wildlife, we'll definitely usually split that up. In high school, sometimes some people will do a Bible study of just freshman guys and freshman girls. Other areas will do what we call all area or like big campaigners. And what that will look like is freshmen to senior guys and girls in a room together. And what we're trying to do in that is kind of this Acts 2 community where you are teaching these high schoolers how to really love each other really well and how to think missional, like how to think of their school and think, how do we impact our school? And so one way we teach that in Campaigners is we have everyone hold hands and face inwards. And we'll say, hey, this is great. This is community, but this is like a holy huddle, meaning we're just thinking about ourselves. We're making sure we're okay. And that's it. In Campaigners, we're trying to teach them to hold hands and face outwards. And you get this picture of, hey, we have each other's backs and we have community, but we're always looking to grab somebody and bring them in. Mm-hmm. Hey, come be a part of this. Like, you want to come be a part of what we're doing. So it's really cool because you'll have this group of Campaigners who will go to the school at night and just pray for kids, like pray for a list of their friends' names who they're going, man, like they need to know.
And these are high schoolers.
These are high schoolers. And so, I mean, I had a kid from Blythewood this year who I remember sitting down with him in the summer going like, hey, what do you want your senior year to be like? He goes, I just want to get out of here and go to like Clemson. Like that's what I'm thinking about. And then we begin to pray like, hey, what would it look like if you really poured into freshman guys? You know, like you're a senior, you're high up in the social ladder when it comes to high school. What if you lowered yourself and like hung out with freshman guys, got to know them? And we have this group of like 10 to 12 freshman guys right now at Blythewood who've been coming to club, coming to campaigners, they're coming to summer camp, all because this kid, Matthew, like changed his senior year.
Which is such like a perfect model of what happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so let me tell a story. I don't even know if I shared this with you. And I think we're talking about the same kid because I was at the all club end of the school year event. I know parents aren't really supposed to stick around, but you were grilling hot dogs for everybody and looked like you needed a little help with 160 kids. So I stuck around for a little bit, but that was the first time that I, as a parent, had stuck around for the entire club. Parents usually don't do that. But when I was there, I can attest to everything that Alex is saying as far as awesome music. The kids were having a blast. Some of them were throwing footballs, and the college students are all out there just mingling because it's almost like a celebration of the end of the year is what I saw it to be. But just quick story about, I think it was Matthew that you're talking about. He was the one that gave his testimony, right? Okay. So, first of all, when you're talking about, during club, they did some fun skits and some fun games. And, I actually have some video of that. So maybe I'll splice that in a little bit so everybody can see a little bit about that. I know you guys did a video as well. And so, everybody was having a blast, and the talk for that night was really a brief talk. You're talking like 10 minutes, like nothing that makes kids uncomfortable. It's really just a time for everybody to just kind of listen to this brief, not even devotional, but kind of was. So Matthew shared his testimony, and he talked a lot about how he grew from his freshman year until his senior year, and you sharing, how can you take that senior year to a different level? Really, I can look back and see how that really shaped that senior year. But I want to share with you, Alex, when we were cleaning up after the event was over, everybody was kind of like getting their shoes and starting to leave or whatever. I was helping some other kids, and Matthew came up and walked up to, there was like two girls standing there, walked up to two girls. It was pretty clear he did not know who they were. Okay. There wasn't like a greeting, like they had seen each other before, knew each other before, but he walked up to him and he walked up to one of the girls and he said, hey, I just want to let you know that when we were singing earlier, I was standing close to you have the most amazing voice. And I just want to tell you, you have an incredible voice. And I thought to myself, man, I want to be that person's friend. Like, they're really cool. I want to be that person's friend. And she was like, blown away that, because it wasn't like an attraction sort of thing. It was like just loving and kind. And he didn't know anybody was watching him do that. Like, he didn't know that I could overhear, but she just was shocked. And he was like, will you be my friend? Like, can I say hi to you at school? And she was like, oh my gosh, yeah, thanks. Like, completely changed this girl's heart just by being kind. And to me, that is just so evident of growth in a person when they're doing that, when nobody knows that they're looking.
Yeah. And I think what you were saying too in Young Life is very much of, we'd say like, hey, we love you regardless of the response. And so it's not like, for me, I'd say I was this kind of hellion kid, most of especially freshman, sophomore year, that I'm sure my leader was like, what am I doing with this guy? And I feel like this sense of like, hey, he loves me where I'm at, and regardless of the response, like he wants me. I remember one quick story of this, some pastors in Atlanta, and who knows the exact specifics of the way this goes, but basically they were seminary students, and they were going, practicing their kind of bedside manners at this hospice. And there's a guy who like no one could get through. Like, every time a pastor would come in, he'd be like, hey, he'd like throw a shoe at them. And he was just kind of like not having it. And so one guy kind of figured out that what he was dying of was lung cancer. And so he went in there and tried to say hello. And again, he got a shoe thrown at him. But he opened his coat pocket and he saw some cigars. And the guy goes, all right, we can go outside, and we go outside and they're smoking some cigars. And the pastor's like, well, just tell me about yourself. He's trying to ask questions. And the guy stops and he says, do you know why I hate people like you? He says, because you want my soul, but you don't want me. And I feel like in Young Life, very much, and I know in ministry that can happen. In Young Life, we go, hey, I'm for you. I'm not trying to convert you, make you a believer. I am for you in this relationship. And know that if I put, we're going to put dividends and we're going to put nickels in this relationship, that it's going to grow into something. But regardless of the response, you're going, hey, I'm for you. I think as 1 Thessalonians 2:8 says, hey, Paul said, we don't just want to share the gospel, but we want to share our very lives as well. And so very much with Young Life, you're bringing them into every aspect of your life, right? One of my Young Life guys who I became his little brother's godfather, and then he is Addie Mae's godfather. And so there's this sense of they're not just high school kids. They just become these dear friends that you just live, you get to live life together. And so, yeah, Matthew's one of those guys who and I were talking about not too long ago. I was like, hey, there's just times in Young Life where you have kids that you get to know pretty well. And then there's some guys that you're like, hey, we're just gonna be buddies for life. Mm-hmm. It far exceeds Young Life. And so, Matthew's definitely one of those. And I think the last C then is camp. So Young Life believes in 5-star camping. We have kind of 26 multi-million-dollar resorts that are geared specifically towards high school kids. And even some of them, when you were at Carolina Point, was actually built with kids with special needs in mind. And so everywhere you walk in that place, there's ramps.
That makes sense.
The pool, there's a 0 entry pool to get in. To get on stage in our club room, there's ramps behind. So that way, if you're in a wheelchair.
The zip line was a sitting zip line. Yeah.
Zip line's meant for them to kind of go on. And so even the camps are they're always thinking, how can we basically, Jim Rayburn used to say, why would you take and he passed away, but he used to say, why would you take the greatest message of all time and put it in a brown paper bag? And so he thought, if I can get people to say, if they say wow to the camp, and it's always in some mountainous place, maybe they'll say wow to the message. Mm-hmm. So camping really is, we say it's the best week of your life or your money back. And it's always been that. Kids are always just what is happening? I can't believe this.
So this is where I have to insert my story, right? And Alex, I've told you my story. So it wasn't until our first assignment in Colorado and my husband was getting ready to deploy. And there was this kind of word of mouth that there was a military week during the summer at a Young Life camp. And that it was for only $100, and that was a military week kind of thing. So somebody else reached out to me and said we should go, because her husband was deploying too, and they were taking a few slots of those who had deployed service members, because it's usually a family camp. Everybody is intact and going. So we signed up to go, and I thought I was crazy. This was our first deployment. Matt had just deployed. We were traveling out to the camp on the second day of this deployment. So I was toddlers and craziness, and I barely thought that I could survive going to McDonald's. How was I going to do a week at a family camp 3 hours from wherever we were? This was crazy. I can't believe I was doing this. But we decided to go, and I'm not going to make this a horribly long story, but I do want to set the scene, because those that are listening who've ever known what it's like to go through deployment or a first deployment and how overwhelmed you are. Driving up to this camp, this was at Trail West in Colorado, which I know is one of the bigger camps of Young Life, but pulling up, there was people on horseback that were greeting every car. When we pulled up and we got out of the car, then they drove our car just a block or two away up to the lodge, unpacked our car for us, and put everything in our rooms for us. So there was nothing that we had to do. If we needed pack and plays, they were already set up. By the time I got to my room was not only completely like set up, all my luggage in there, the pack and play was set up, our itineraries for the week were laid out, not just for me, but for each of my boys. Like, it was executed flawlessly. They found out that Matt was deployed, and there was like little to no connectivity where we were, but they made it possible that if my husband wanted to Skype with us, they had set apart a separate room for us to be able to have contact with him anytime we needed to. And constantly throughout the week, we're checking on me, asking if we needed anything. Did we need to speak with our husband? Whatever we needed. Like you said, like, food was amazing. It was served family style. But what was really cool is that we had a high school Young Life leader that was assigned to every family at Trail West. And so I had a high school student that was constantly by my side if I needed it, that would pick up my toddler and help me with a plate of food if we needed to, or if I was exhausted, they were playing with my kids, like exactly everything that you were saying when it was talking about doing life with people and actually getting involved and getting to know them and seeing them as other people that they could serve. And here I was, a chaplain's wife, grew up in the church, but I have to say it was one of the most life-changing weeks of my entire life. Part of it was because I was in the middle of this deployment, but part of it was also because I had never experienced the church or people serving me with such a level of kindness and attentiveness. And like you're saying, it wasn't about, because I know there's a lot of people listening that might think, is this really going to be really churchy? And it really wasn't. It was so balanced and healthy. And it was more about serving people, loving people, and being part of their life. But because of that, I grew closer to God. Because of that, it shaped my entire perspective of kingdom, what it means to be a Christian, what it means to serve other people. To this day, I feel like I can see a mom with toddlers and go, I know exactly how to serve that person because of how somebody served me at Trail West. And that was a high school student, changed my life, completely changed my life.
Military families need hope that there is something more. There's someone who cares.
You're a soldier 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's not a time when they can't call you up and say, hey, we have a movement or we have a mission we have to go accomplish, and it'll take you away from your family.
Military Week at Trail West is just a time where we take active duty soldiers and families who have gone through a series of deployments and redeployments and trainings, so they're away from their families more than they're with their families. And we set them in a location that's just founded and surrounded by God's love.
We needed some time to recuperate between military life, illness, busyness in our children's life, to just reflect on us as a family, because our life has been hurting.
Everything that's done during Military Week sets these families up to be a family again and to restore relationships.
Since we've been here, all these little stresses are gone, so we can just be ourselves. Go back to the times where it was romantic and we didn't have all our kids all the time, because our kids can just run off and play and we can actually do things together.
There's no TV in the room, so that's not the thing. We've been putting our phones up, computers closed and all that, and we're just, talking in the scenery. Of course, it just makes you even want to just kind of bond, and it's just freeing.
I love that we get 3 meals a day together. Because for the next year, he won't be there.
To sit at a table and actually have a conversation is so rare and so hard for them. To put them in this environment where no one had to shop for it, no one had to cook, no one had to clean up, they can just actually be together as a family is brilliant.
We've done so much talking, so much laughing. I didn't realize my kids were as funny as they are, because just sitting at the table, they're hilarious.
Frank, he had a soldier, one of several, but one in particular that Frank was with when he was killed. And one of the last things he did with his family before he deployed was come here. And so we've thought a lot about him this week. And just experiencing some of those things that we know he experienced with his 5-year-old daughter and his 8-year-old son. And I know it meant a lot to him to be here. And that those were the last memories they have as a family. You guys realize you're giving us a great opportunity as a family, but sometimes it might be the last memories that a family has to go on for the rest of their life here on earth to hold on to.
I love my kids, and I want the best for them. And spending this time with them and showing them that I love them every day, it's heart-filling.
I think the brilliance of Military Week is that their lives are changed, and they're changed for good. And it is a radical course correction for them. It gives them a source of strength and an ability to go back and live the lives that they're doing, but also to thrive.
This week at Trail West has been completely amazing. It's been wonderful. I love this place.
You watch walls come down and facades, countenance change, and families re-engage. It's amazing what happens in 1 week.
We are going to be okay, and our family's going to be okay. Coming here allowed us the opportunity to realize that we had good, strong bones, and we just needed to build on those better.
You strangers have given us such wonderful family time. You can tell it's more than just a donation, though. You can feel the love in the gift.
Somebody who doesn't know us, doesn't know our family, doesn't know our circumstances, but chose to invest in our family because they appreciate what my husband has chosen to do for a career, really just speaks volumes about the people that want to pay forward, and we really appreciate it.
This is truly a real investment in people.
And so I knew personally that once my kids got to the age where they could start wildlife, we were definitely going to do that, because that was not only life-changing for me, but to see high school students get that, like I want that for my kids. I want my kids to understand that level of service. So it was outstanding. So here we are.
I think one of my favorite things to do when you're at camp is and all the high school guys are asking, like, okay, so like, they're all high school kids serving you like that. And they're either doing, they're cleaning toilets, they're doing the dishes, they're serving the meals, they're cutting the grass, or they're doing the outdoor crew. And my favorite part towards the end of the year, towards the end of the week, someone always goes, all right, so like, why are these kids, like, why are they doing it? Like, are they getting paid? Like, they're getting like a pretty good amount of money to do this. And you're like, no, actually, like, it's all volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
They got to pay their way to get there. And so some of them is a lot of plane flights. Like, they're just giving up a month out of their summer to go serve. And you would think, 26 camps, you need about 50 kids per camp. You have, I think it's 12 weeks, 10 or 12 weeks in the summer where that's happening. So that's a lot of like kids to fill spots. And you have to fight to get spots. I mean, like this year I have like 10 kids wanting to do it, and I could only send 3.
And so let me ask you a question that I think a lot of parents listening might want to ask you, and that would be, talk a little bit about the safety in the leaders that you have. And I'm sure that there are background checks and that sort of thing that's done, because when you talk about other kids investing in these kids, most parents are going to go, well, who's the leader? Like, that would be you, right? The Young Life staff. This is your job to do this, but who are these other kids that are involved? And should I let my kids have access to those kids? So talk a little bit about the safety of that.
So leaders, so the normal breakdowns, you always have a staff person in the area. So for me, like an area director, someone who oversees a couple of schools, and then you'll have, and that area director normally is a leader also in one of the schools, and then they'll oversee, like in Northeast, we have 5 high schools, about 40 leaders. So we have 40 college leaders who are pouring in and basically leading in these schools. Now, depending where you are in the country, like when I was in Beaufort, South Carolina, we didn't have college leaders. It was all adults. And so the idea of like, you got, it's a young person's game is completely not right. Like kids don't care what you know until they know how much you care, that idea. And so we've had a leader back in the day who just retired up in Shelby, who is 80 and just stopped leading. And so
wow,
21 until 80. I mean, unbelievable. But yeah, each leader, there's a complete background check on each leader. So we definitely have all those measures. But even before then, there's a kind of an extensive training process, because what you're asking of a leader is not just, hey, come show up once a week to something. You're asking them, hey, will you go to club once a week? Will you go to campaigners once a week? Will you go to some sporting event once a week? Plus you have leadership. There's like 4 to 5 things a week that you're asking sometimes of a leader. And so that right away kind of takes off anybody who's just kind of going, oh, like I just want to maybe try this thing out. It's a lot to be a leader. I mean, you're asking them to be a missionary. Mm-hmm. So to do that, you kind of have to be both feet in, diving in. And so that kind of changes the caliber of, I'd say, of leaders that in Young Life that we're kind of asking for, because they'll just fall off real quick. But yeah, I mean, from the training aspect to, I feel like even the counseling aspect of leaders knowing when a kid, let's say, for example, you know, kids will open up to you about things, maybe they're not open up to their parents, and knowing the wisdom of, hey, when a kid's life is at risk, you know, when a kid goes and says like, hey, I'm thinking about, you know, suicide right now. Like leaders know, like that's a buzzword of this is immediate. We're not going to play around of, oh, I don't know if he's serious or not. We always train that's always serious no matter what. And so you treat it with that. And so I would say Young Life in that is kind of what we call it, where leaders are all mandatory reporters. And so like if there's abuse happening, like we have to kind of report, right? At the same time, there's some things that, you know, kids confide in you that are between you guys, you know, between that. And so there's this balance that I feel like we train and we teach really well to know and make sure that, hey, yes, I want to be your friend, but I'm also your leader. And I also got to make sure that there's a dangerous situation that I'm an adult entering into this. I'm not a high school. I'm not trying to be a high school kid and like be your best friend. There's aspects to that, but I also know that I'm an adult and I'm a leader. And so that kind of helps when it comes to making sure kids are safe. You're the adult in the room going, hey, yes, we should do this, but also that's probably not the best idea. Mm-hmm. That's, you know, like a high school kid would, let's go jump off that roof. Like, no, we're not going to do that. But instead, you know, it's not, there's a sense of you're directing them, right? It's not like, no, that's dumb, we shouldn't do that. It's, hey, actually, why don't we go do this? And they're like, great idea, you know, and they'll just run with you.
Moving for me is hard. Now that I'm older, it's harder because once you make that good group of friends, you have to leave that. So then it's like finding new friends all over again, and then it's, well, will they like me? Do they have the same interests? Am I gonna fit in? What do I have to do? It's kind of hard, I don't like it. My name is Rebecca Suzanne. I've lived in 6 different places in my 16 years.
Military kids are just like every other teen, facing the challenges that all the other teens are facing, but on top of that, they're facing a ton of lost time with a parent, loss of friends as you move every year, every 2 years. They're facing deployments where they have a parent that is in the middle of a war.
At any time, they could call him to go back on a tank and say, okay, we want you to go to Afghanistan or somewhere else that's not safe. I try not to think about it. Club Beyond changed my life.
Club Beyond is made up of leaders, adults, who choose to love kids that may or may not be here a month from now.
The first day I came, I was so excited. Everyone there is so nice. They're kind of like siblings, but they're the ones that you want.
Club Beyond is necessary because these are kids that are moving all the time and going into communities that don't understand the challenges that they're facing.
It kind of feels like a home. I can let go, you know, be my normal self.
It provides continuity, people who love them and understand this is what a deployment is.
It's comforting. It's that safe place when you're feeling upset. This is your little getaway. This is like your little mini vacation once a week. There's lots of kids that go to Club Beyond that are just like me all around the world. Deployments and all that stuff are hard. At Club Beyond, you forget about those things.
I've been there. I know that it's hard.
Becca gets me. There's a lot of things that we have in common, being that her dad was in the Army doing the same job my dad does now. She's kind of like my older sister, somebody that, you know, if I have an issue, I can talk to.
You are not alone in this. You're not alone in the sadness. You're not alone in the loss. You're not alone in not wanting to say goodbye. You're not alone in not knowing what to do in your family or missing your father. That's why we're here. I want to hear what you're feeling.
Every kid wishes they had somebody like Miss Becca.
I do Club Beyond because it changes lives. I have seen eternities change, and I have seen kids walk from death into life. And I have seen kids come home for the first time, even though they've had 20 different homes. To be able to give that to these kids is a huge gift, and it's so needed.
That's one of the things I love about Young Life is that it's extreme in a safe way, but it's just like the first time I dropped Aiden off at Wildlife, I was so nervous. Like, my kid has been to so many schools and so many churches. In fact, one move that we did, we had visited several churches and we needed to kind of narrow it down and decide which church we were going to be staying at. And we were going to try out 1 or 2 more churches before he came home and said, no more. This one is it. Even if I don't like it, I cannot stand the thought of meeting new people, like any more new people. And he just had hit his limit. And so here I was taking him to Wildlife. It was a club, and so nervous. And I'm like, here I am, I'm putting this kid into another group of new kids. And we pulled up, and for club, they were outside playing baseball with apples. Like, just smashing apples all over the cul-de-sac. And as a parent, like, this shows how old and responsible I am. I'm like, oh, who's going to clean this up? This is going to be so sticky, you know? And the leaders were like, we got it. Like, we'll definitely clean up when we're done. But the kids were having a blast. And I had to drag him away at the end of the night. He was having such a blast. So, and ever since then, he was like, it's fun. It's exciting. The college kids are so positive and good role models. And so I think what I'd like to do is just kind of speak to the different groups that might be listening. Because if you're a first responder family and you're settled in your community, or let's say you're National Guard or Reserve and you are settled in your community, you should be able to find a Young Life in your community, or even a Young Life that's assigned to that school or to that district to get involved with for sure. And so if you are active duty and you're constantly relocating, that's what Alex was saying, is that Young Life has a Club Beyond that is a military kid version of Young Life. So your military kid can be involved with the local Young Life or Wildlife, but also do the Club Beyond, which is sometimes usually on post or on the installation that is only military kids. And so I was one of those families that I had heard of Club Beyond before, but did not know it was even Young Life, which makes me even more excited for my kids to be involved in that. And so your military kids can be involved in either. So just a really great resource. And so real quick, and then I'm going to hand it back to you, Alex. This was our vision for our family. Because of that experience of moving our kids all over the place from church to church, one of the downfalls of being an active duty family and constantly moving is that everywhere we go, we have to find a new church. Now, my husband is a chaplain and is often assigned to run a chapel service. But most of those listening who have known and been involved in chapel services, which we definitely support, know that the youth and children's ministry kind of stuff is lacking or sometimes difficult because families are coming and going constantly. And so for us as a family, we just found that it was just such a burden to constantly find these local churches every time we moved. And we still do that because we need a church to be involved in. And that's part of our belief system, that we need to be part of the body and need to be part of community and serving. And we are great with the boys being a part of that youth group if they want to be part of it. But our strategy has really been, Young Life to me is something that can be in their life that is consistent no matter where we move. Like Alex said, it can be a little bit different here or there. Like I think the campaigners in Charlottesville had a different name, but it was basically the same concept. So there might be small changes, but for us, we felt like, you know what, no matter where we go, there's so much chaos and uncertainty in the military lifestyle and so much frequent change that our kids go through as it is. Young Life can be something that is consistent no matter where we go, all the way through college, so that even when my son goes off to college and we get assigned on the other side of the country, my hope is that he has had such a great experience with Young Life, going through high school, maybe becoming that high school Young Life leader where he's taken on that responsibility, taken on that leadership role, that he can then go into college and have this friend group that is also a great community of kids with Young Life staff that are also working with them too, which hopefully my plan is to keep him in a good direction, even in college, and feeling like he can serve while he's also in college. So that's kind of been our strategy as parents, that if you are an active duty family and you have also experienced that, that kind of frustration of the constant search for a church home, a ministry to get involved in, Young Life really can be, even if you're in a different country, you can find usually Young Life in that other country for your kids to be involved in. So Alex, you being here in Columbia has been a great opportunity for us to get to know you. Club Beyond is building at Fort Jackson. And so we're involved with that as well as the Northeast side. So I think the next thing that I kind of wanted to ask you is, what is the role of parents in Young Life? Because it can be, like I did in Charlottesville, because of what kind of was going on in our life, it can be just parents dropping their kids off and say, hey, have a great time, I'll pick you up later. But there's also a way for parents to get involved if they feel like they need to, or they want to, or they feel called to. So why don't you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, so one other, C I didn't mention in Young Life is what we call committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say committee or adults are really, it's the backbone of Young Life. And so they are the ones who are kind of caring for leaders, caring for staff. They're advocating for Young Life in the school district or in the community. They're helping network when it comes to finding places to have meetings and stuff like that. And so there are so many ways for, I say, parents to get involved with Young Life, whether that is joining the committee, that could be joining what we call, like in the Northeast, we have like school support teams, kind of, called sender teams. And so that would be basically you're caring for leaders at that school. And I'd say the heart of, I feel like with adults in there going, hey, they have a heart for seeing the next generation impacted. And I feel like not even just their kid, but future on. And I always like to say, man, if I could go back to that, I want to say it's like 1984 and talk to the group of adults, parents who were sitting in a room in Cincinnati going, and they circled Kings High School and they said, that school needs Young Life. Oh, if I could go back and talk to them and just thank them, I would do it in a heartbeat, you know, because of them going, we're not okay until the next school has it. Like I was impacted. My wife was impacted. Like our family's different because someone said that school needs it. And so I think the role of parents and adults in Young Life is so vital because they're the ones who are going, we need to make sure this thing is going to keep going and doesn't just stop at this school and not just stop with this kid, you know, going, we're not okay until we're reaching all kids in all schools. You know, in the Northeast, we're going, it's not just all the high schools. It's got to be the middle schools. It's got to be kids with special needs, which we're getting ready to start. Teen moms, they had this opportunity, you know, they're kind of like the lepers of a high school. You don't even know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Probably going, do they even exist? And the crazy thing is, yes. And there's a ton. You just don't, no one knows about them. And obviously being a parent is hard. Imagine being a high school parent is incredibly hard. And then, so I feel like the roles for parents are very much emailing, calling, you know, finding your local Young Life and going, hey, how can I help support? How can I help be a part of this? I know as staff are always looking for adults who are willing to come join this thing with us. And really you are, like, you're trying to, you're creating a missional community. You're going, the Northeast is now the mission field and everyone who's a part of that, you know? And so for us, that's Fort Jackson, you know, that's all Richland 2 schools. It's this idea of we're not finished until every kid has an opportunity to hear the greatest story ever told, from somebody who cares about them. And so adults have a vital role in many different ways in kind of helping that be accomplished.
Well, I know one of the things that Matt and I wanted to do when we moved here, in fact, we chose the house that we're living in because we were like, this would be a great house for club if we needed it, or campaigners, or so sometimes parents open their homes. I know in Charlottesville, there was a couple of parents that the club was always at their house, or campaigners was, always at their house. And so I'm so thankful that they did that. Another thing that we're looking forward to is having the college students over and feeding them a couple times and getting to know them and investing in them, because we all remember what it's like to be in college, and a good warm meal is awesome, right? When your family might be a state or two away. So we're looking forward to that as well. So there are some great ways that parents can get involved, but at the same time, it's not, I also love that there is that freedom. If you can't get involved, but you're looking for something for your child, for your teen, to be involved in, that's really positive. This is a really great avenue as well. I think, just to talk about military kids here for just a second, and I think first responders fit in this as well. I know for us, it has been an incredible challenge. We have averaged in the last 5 years, probably moving every year and a half, probably 8 years every year and a half is what it's averaged out to be, which is insane. And that has looked like pretty much our kids have been in a new school almost every year or every other year. My youngest son, who's going to be going into middle school and will be ready for wildlife, he's graduated 5th grade, and he's been in 5 elementary schools. And so just the constant coming and going and trying to insert yourselves into a friend group, and the sensitivity to rejection. I was talking with a group of military parents, and everybody's concern is that with this current Generation Z group of kids, military kids can tend to come across so intense because they're desperate for community, but they've also learned the social skills to insert themselves very quickly, that the civilian kids are kind of taken by surprise. And we as adults know what that's like, because we as military families do that as well. In fact, I think that the first time I met Alex, I was probably pretty overwhelming too. I was like, let's go. What can I do? I'm ready to get started. Or maybe you welcomed that. I'm not sure, but
yeah. One of looking for adults like that. So
we can be pretty intense because we have this short amount of time. We know what we need. And so if we don't jump in and establish that very quickly, we find ourselves then getting ready to transition out, and it's too late. And so for us, for Aiden, going back to Charlottesville again, and our reasons for getting him involved was I was really concerned as a parent of him getting into middle school, having moved so many times and finding that good circle of friends to hang with. And so our hope for both of our kids in this is that they can go into the school, and like you were saying in your story, Alex, to be able to meet these other kids that they normally would not meet or be in the same cliques with, but to find this group of students so that when they have a great time with them at club and they realize we're all just a bunch of kids who need to have fun and probably need Jesus, right? That they can then go back into their school and high five each other in the hallway or say, I know him, he's a great kid, right? It breaks down those social rules that exist within the school and creates a community of support. And that's what I need as a parent, is I need those young life leaders to be able to say the things that we're also saying, but kids start listening to other peers more than their parents.
So true. It's funny. I coach golf, and it's funny when I have dads who are bringing their kids to, giving them a lesson, and I'll say the same thing their dads are saying. And the kid's like, oh, okay, I've been saying that the entire time. He goes, no, there's a point to that. You're like, just because it's another voice saying that. And if there's a great book is Chap Clark. He did a very kind of big giant study on adolescence, and there's a book called Hurt 2.0, which is all on like adolescence, and it kind of
is it hurt HURT?
Yeah, like someone hurt you. So like hurt, and there's Hurt 2.0 is the less academic version of it, and we all read it on staff. And he's a teacher at Fuller Seminary, and basically for his sabbatical, he just went and became a substitute teacher at a high school. And just said, hey, I'm writing a book for you. What do you want people to know about you? And so they just kind of opened up the floodgates and shared everything, and kind of paints a little bit of like this bleak culture when it comes to adolescence going, they don't feel like they can open up to anybody except for teenagers. I mean, a great reason, Netflix has that 13 Reasons Why, and you'll realize the one thing that hurts them most in that entire the entire show is that there's no adults. It's just high school kids dealing with crazy trauma with other high school kids. There's no adult in the picture at all. You don't know how to bring them in. And at the end of the book, he kind of says, basically, what's the hope is that for every one kid, you need 5 caring adults in their life. And so I think, that can be a youth pastor, both parents, and in Young Life, we're going, hey, let us just be one more caring adult, one more person that can just be there. And so Bob Goff also in his fun book, Love Does, the very first chapter, he talks about his Young Life leader and talks about him wanting to drop out of school and do something crazy and go be a park ranger at 17, which a terrible idea, right? And his leader's like, I'll go with you. And went with them. And it was for literally 2 nights. He's in this, I forget, some state park, Bob Goff, he's crazy. And basically he's trying to find a job on this Saturday that he left on Friday. And the leader's like, I'll go with you. Yeah, let's do this. And went as he tried to give resumes. And of course, no one's hiring him because he's a 17-year-old high school dropout, but really isn't. It's only been 1 day, right? And at the end of the weekend, he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And the leader's like, all right, I'll go back with you. He was with him the entire time. He wasn't you shouldn't do this. He was just with them. And Bob Goff says, sometimes what you were saying with Aiden, sometimes witness starts with witness. That you're with people. And so I think that is another thing in Young Life and Club Beyond. It's hey, we need to be with kids. And so whether that's a JV soccer game that nobody attends, as leaders, you're great spots to go to.
To kind of wrap up our time, Alex, I know that you are overseeing Columbia, kind of Northeast area. And so why don't you just take a moment to talk a little bit about how that's going? Because I know some of that is in building stages. Just in case there's anybody listening that is in the Columbia area or the Fort Jackson area. And I think that those of you who are elsewhere, once you get involved with Young Life, you might see that Young Life in the local area is in a similar place where they might be building in these other schools. And like you said, they're needing parents to kind of circle that school and say, how can we, get started there? So share a little bit about where you're at with Columbia Northeast.
Yeah. So Columbia, my wife and I just moved to about 1 year ago now. So we moved in July, and we were on staff in Beaufort, South Carolina, right by Parris Island for the Marines. And so we were there for 8 years with Young Life and then just moved to Northeast. And Northeast is in one spot when we came was great. We were in 5 high schools. We have a great pipeline for leaders at USC, go Gamecocks. And because of that, I think we were in this great spot to really do a lot of growth when it comes to the ministry. Like I said, there's kind of umbrella ministries. So we're getting ready to start Capernaum, which is special needs ministry this fall. And so we're going to hopefully start that Spring Valley High School. And it'll be for if you have a kid that goes to any school really in Columbia, they can come be a part of it. But we just had to hone in a school where we feel like we need to kind of stack hands and start moving in. And then obviously the Club Beyond, now that we have Club Beyond kind of up and going, our mindset in Northeast is going, okay, how do we impact the most military kids in the Northeast? Knowing that we have about 120 high school and middle school kids that live on the installation. And then we have, I think it's 1,800 that live off the installation. And the normal model for Club Beyond is it's on base. So we got to be a little more creative when it comes to the Northeast of, okay, so how do we impact military kids? If they're here, then a lot of them are over here outside of base. And so, I think part of that is if you're at Fort Jackson and you're going, hey, I want to know how to get involved. Jared, who is in charge of Club Beyond for the Northeast, is looking for adults and parents going, hey, how can you help team me up and help partner with me so that we can go and make the biggest impact that we could? And that could look like opening your house. That could look like being on a committee. That could look like leading. Again, it doesn't have to be a college kid to lead at all. In fact, I'd say your best leaders are probably when they're out of college, because the more mature they grow up, they can have those conversations a little bit better And so I feel like there's a lot of good things that are starting to build in the Northeast. And the one thing that I feel like as I'm coming in here is going, how can we lay this foundation of adults? Because really the committee in Young Life is what keeps Young Life going. And that's financially, that's really because the committee's not moving. Staff, you might be there for hopefully a long time, 3, 4, 5, maybe your entire career in Young Life, you can be in one area. But as Young Life staff, we definitely see ourselves as missionaries. So we always know, kind of like military, hey, we're here for a season. And then we might have to be picked up and go somewhere else for a season. But the adults aren't going anywhere. And that's why they're such the bedrock of what we do in Young Life. And so in the Northeast, we're kind of rebuilding that when we got here. I think it kind of fell apart over the last couple of years. So part of my job kind of coming in is rallying adults to kind of go, hey, here's where we're moving. Here's where I feel like the Lord is moving. Come join us because we need you. And I'd say not that we just, I love this. I had a friend say, not that we just need you, but we want you. We want you to come be a part of this. I think there's a lot of times with a good friend named Rick, he is in downtown Columbia, so it's more of your urban schools. And he says, sometimes it's like he hears, oh, I need you, but I don't want you. Because, if you're an African-American, it's like, oh, we need your help here because you're an African-American. We need your help here. And I feel like I feel like he's taught me is, I don't need you, I want you. Which is what God does. Like God doesn't need us at all. Like he doesn't need anybody to go and do the works he needs to do, but he wants you. And I feel like with adults going, we need, more importantly, we want, because we're part of something that's going to far outlast anything else. It's not going to be temporary. It's going to be eternal. I'm really excited about this next chapter with Northeast and where the Lord's moving and how to kind of partner alongside him.
So, Alex, thank you so much for joining us. I could honestly pick your brain forever because I really am, if nobody noticed, really excited about Young Life and that my kids can finally enjoy it. Jack has been watching Aiden do wildlife for a while, so he's been excited about Club Beyond and getting involved as well. And so I can't thank you enough for caring enough about our kids, caring enough about our families, really, to devote your life, both you and your wife, really, because we haven't talked a lot about your wife, but she's doing a lot of the Young Lives with the teen moms and also with the special needs. So those of you who have that are first responders or even military, that your EFMP families that have special needs kids, there is something in Young Life for those kids too. That's what's awesome, is that really you can plug your kid in anywhere. And to me, this organization really just shows how much they care and that they have a heart for all of these students that really need I think warmth around them, warm relationships, but also the love of Jesus. And so thank you, Alex, for what you do. And I know that I'll be seeing you super soon on how we can boost up the Northeast, bring in some of these military families as well. And so it's a common heart that I have as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been fun. First interview on a podcast. I love it.